Hello again. My name is Michael O'Rourke, Level 2 USAC Certified Cycling Coach, AFA Certified Personal Trainer, co-owner and co-operator of Proactive Personal Training and Fitness Education here in Auburn, California. This is the second in a three-part series where I am comparing and contrasting FTP based training and training zones with those based on actual metabolic assessment. Now in the last segment, we addressed and defined FTP as well as explored how to find out what it is. In this segment, we're going to go a little deeper to better understand some of the differences between training based on FTP derived from a field test with training based on actual metabolic assessment. Now, the first thing to understand is that the primary purpose with any testing is to establish training practices, which usually involves training zones, and monitor progress. Now, you can see on this graph that the color-coded training zones, or energy supplies, are roughly correlated with power output and duration. These correlations can be derived from percentages of FTP, which in turn are based on known principles of physiology. For example, as we discussed in the last segment, the creatine phosphate system can supply 10 to 12 seconds of maximal effort, but within 15 seconds, that energy supply is completely depleted and the anaerobic glycolytic system needs to take over. You want to know this because you want to train the appropriate energy systems that apply to your event, as well as train the right systems at the right times during the season leading up to your events. Now, as discussed in a previous segment, the popular method to determine FTP is to do a maximal 20-minute effort and take 95% of that power as your 60-minute threshold power or anaerobic threshold. And there's sound statistical analysis based on a ton of data to support this concept. And for a lot of athletes, this will provide good usable data. But have a look at this comparison between two riders' energy supply during the exact same workout. Now, right out of the gate, both riders appear to have equal energy contribution from the aerobic system. But look at the gaps. Rider number one fills in the gaps with a lot more contribution from the creatine phosphate system as compared to rider number two, who gets more energy from the anaerobic glycolysis system. Now, both have the same power output and the same outcome. They just achieve those outcomes differently. And a simple field test won't tell you this. If you do a series of field tests, you might get closer. Metabolic testing, however, will get you spot on. And this not only illustrates the difference between performance and metabolic assessments, but how to utilize that information to train better and pick your events better. So for example, rider number one is probably better suited to a punchy crit with a short bunch sprint, whereas rider number two might be better suited to a road course with long, 1 to 2 minute rollers, a short hilltop finish, or maybe a long straight drag race. The same can be seen in this 20-minute field test between these two riders. As we mentioned in the previous segment, energy supply for a maximal 60-minute effort is predominantly aerobic, with very little energy contribution coming from the anaerobic glycolytic system and virtually none coming from the creatine phosphate system. But the same assurance cannot be made for an effort as short as 20 minutes. So using these two riders as an example, they both hit 330 watts for 20 minutes. And if we take 95% of that value, then their theoretical 60-minute peak power output should be 313 watts. But let's look a little deeper. If we take away the creatine phosphate energy contribution, rider number two is actually at 310 watts, which is close enough. But rider number one is down to 302 watts. That could be a significant difference if you're going to base training zones on an already overestimated anaerobic threshold, or FTP. So if each of these riders use the same training zones the same way, not only will one possibly get different results than the other, but neither rider may get the best results they could get. Now, the takeaway is that if you really want to maximize your training, power alone may not be enough. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the FTP system or the 20-minute field test. For the time-crunched athlete, for the amateur athlete, for the recreational rider, for those who fall inside the norms, it's totally usable. It's a great system. But on the other hand, if your time is really limited, either because of age, like you're a master's athlete, your time is limited because of family, because of work, and that happens to a lot of us, you need to maximize your time. Now, whether your goal is a state championship, national championship, maybe just Strava PRs, or you just want to crush your friends, and who doesn't want to crush your friends? If you want to maximize your time, it's really worth the time and the money to get metabolic assessment to really fine-tune your training. Field tests will assess performance and whether you're improving or not, but it's not going to tell you why you're improving or what you need to train as well. And I would submit that few, if any, pros actually train off of the FTP system. And that concludes our second of 3 segments. If you have any questions, please contact me at the website you see on your screen, as well as any questions about endurance training, coaching, or metabolic testing. Until next time.